Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Clinic Gym Radio. Now, listen, I am talking to a second-time guest, Dr. John Jaquish. And for some reason during this, I must warn you, I get pretty fired up. I get pretty excited. And therefore, we exchange some colorful language. So if the kids are in the car or you're easily offended, then definitely don't listen to this episode. However, if you would like to listen to it, I'm just forewarning you, there's a little bit of colorful language. And I do talk about, we touch on a couple things that maybe are politically charged, like drug responses to the pandemic and whatnot. I'm not here to be a political, to have political ideas on this show. I just heard an interesting interview about the effects of a certain drug, so I bring that up. But as always, man, if you have problems with what I'm saying, or you want to discuss something further, or you have any feedback for me whatsoever, always reach out. I'm always happy to take that feedback. I want the show to be something that you enjoy. And I typically shy away from too much cussing because I just think it doesn't allow us to really open up the conversation to the scientific methods that I would prefer. But sometimes you got to get a little passion enveloped. And for me, that's when the sailor language comes out. By the way, how'd sailors get to be known as the ones with the foul mouths? I know two sailors, and both of them are squeaky clean guys. So anyways, it was my foul mouth. I'll take full responsibility, but I'm just giving you a little warning. Hope you enjoyed this episode, a second interview with Dr. John Jaquish. Dr. J, how are you?
Hey, I'm Josh. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again. This is fun.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, what was so interesting about our last interview is, we talked about a lot of things, including your X3 product and OsteoStrong, which you made for your mom, but sold on the to clinics everywhere. And along the way, we hit up on the idea of something that just doesn't get talked about enough, which is managing chronic pain through improving the musculoskeletal system. I'll say that. I don't want to say through fitness or exercise, but through improving the musculoskeletal system.
Right.
And you happen in all your research and looking at all your products, you stumbled onto quite a bit of information about that. And although it's not the focus of specifically of any of your products, you guys kind of amassed some info around that. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I would love to dive into that today because, everybody listening to this podcast is a PT, chiro, massage therapist, strength coach, and you can't be around those patients and all the listeners here are blending the clinic and the gym, but you can't be anywhere around a gym without at least daily hearing somebody talk about just low back pain. I mean, a myriad of things, but just low back pain would, if you're a strength and conditioning coach and you don't think that any of your clients have low back pain, you just haven't asked the question yet.
Sure.
It's crazy. And,
yes, it is.
And unfortunately, in many senses, although I think my profession, chiropractic, isn't the evidence-informed crowd is making drastic improvements, and we're seeing a lot of great progress being made around that, we still, as a society, are dealing with an opioid epidemic. We're dealing with, the amount of ibuprofen that is consumed in this country it could fill the Grand Canyon every year, I'm sure. And then you look at pain management. I don't know around you, but around me, there used to be like maybe 2 pain management offices. And now I feel like I see them more and more and more. Say Las Vegas Pain Clinic or Sunset Pain Clinic and all these things that just medical offices that have pain in the title. I'm thinking, my God, we're not controlling this, right? It's just getting out of hand and out of hand.
No, it's perpetual management via perpetual medications, most of which are opioids.
Right.
It's depressing to say, but this gave pharmaceutical companies the opportunity to deliver a series of pharmaceuticals that were welcomed, they were asked for, and they were addictive by design.
Yeah.
Anybody who's selling anything would love to sell something that's addictive.
For sure. Yeah.
Because you're selling it.
Right.
So
that's a lot of what it is, right? That's the whole idea of shoppers club at my local Albertsons is they want you to come to them for all the products you buy for your house. And if they could find a way to make it addictive to buy lettuce and tomatoes and cheese and milk, they would have done it, you know? Yeah.
Well, but they did, because Cheez-Its taste a lot like cheese, right? But there's other stuff in them. There's refined carbohydrates, which are as addictive as cocaine. We know that from a number of studies.
Wow.
So So like, they're engineering food all the time to be more addictive. And, is it hurting people? I don't think they made food addictive with malicious intent other than sales, which is not malicious in itself. But if these things are hurting people, you would imagine that somebody would question it. The problem is, addicted people like their Cheetos. They like their Twinkies, and they like their ice cream. And, it's, I think and when we talk about pain management, because this does dovetail into pain management, like sugar is pretty much the worst thing you can eat because it's an inflammatory. And whatever pain you're in is going to be made worse by the simple carbohydrates you take in. They're addictive. Like, it's one of those, you're just not going to get Congress to change their mind on addictive foods, because everybody in Congress is eating pizza and ice cream. I mean, I don't know if
you look at the biggest donors to every political campaign too. I mean, you have the health insurance, like United Health and all those, but not too far behind that is all the, and it's funny, it's covered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but what agriculture covers is corn syrup is an agricultural product, and yet it's so far from the original version of agriculture. It's unbelievable, right? Right.
It's chemical.
But we don't have the U.S. Department of Chemicals yet. Maybe we should, but we don't.
Ingestible chemicals, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Department of Agriculture should probably rename itself, because that's really what it is. Like, it's not representing meat and eggs and, vegetables. It's representing craft foods, which makes a bunch of chemicals.
Right. Nabisco makes Oreos along with other products that get eaten. So, but going to this idea of chronic pain. So I want to talk specifically about a subgroup. So, for chiropractors, a lot of times they'll get somebody walk in with low back pain. Their first bout, I would guess that just statistically, you probably dealt with low back pain at some point in your life, because statistically, everybody, almost everybody.
I have 2 bulging discs.
Okay. And, but that doesn't mean it's a death sentence. That doesn't mean that it has to be forever, right? And
I haven't felt pain since, maybe, let me think. I haven't felt pain in 4 years.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. And that's what we want to hear, is we want to get to the end of an episode of pain, like it might take weeks or days or even a couple months, but we want to get to those ends of episodes, which kind of dovetails into how we got into this, because you were talking about the impact of I'm going to say the musculoskeletal system, but basically, for those who didn't listen to our first interview, Dr. J made a product to combat his mother's osteoporosis diagnosis that turned into a clinical, I don't know what you would call it, a machine.
Medical device.
Thank you. And then within that, you found some research all about muscle growth and hypertrophy that helped you develop your what's known as
I made some observations. Right. Like when developing this device, which compresses bone and triggers bone density to go up, I looked at the forces that the body was capable of tolerating and producing in impact-ready ranges of motion. So, like I mentioned before, basically the impact positions that gymnasts use to absorb force. Now, everybody has the same reflexes, so everybody kind of has the same biomechanics, but gymnasts perfect the repeatability of absorbing those impacts. So when looking at that, I designed the medical devices. When testing the medical devices, I realized humans have the ability to absorb incredible forces, sometimes 10 times body weight in very specific, I'm talking about the lower extremities, of course, that's where we get muscle power. 10 times body weight at 120 degree angle of inclusion behind the knee.
Now, we're not talking about insanely 1% top of the trained profession. Or
no, I'm talking about
professionals. You're saying the general population has an ability to absorb force much greater than we believe they have.
Much greater. Yeah. And in the clinical trial with the medical device, like I did that in London, and the test subjects had never exercised. Like they could have done some cardio. That's not going to have a positive impact on bone at all. But like no strength training, no significant exercise whatsoever. And that was part of the inclusion criteria. Now, fortunately, when you go to East London, most people have never worked out ever a day in their life. It's not the healthiest.
Yeah, you don't want to go to Vancouver and try and find people who haven't skied or snowboarded, right? Like you did a good job of self-selecting the country and location. So.
No, I mean, different parts of London are different. You know, if you go to Mayfair, people work out there. But if you go to East London, no, not really. Yeah. It's mostly an immigrant population. In fact, a lot of different places on earth, like exercise is not really a thing. Like they might do manual labor, some people, some men, zero women. I mean, a lot of these countries, women aren't even allowed outside. Yeah. Without they're covered and with men. So these women never.
Let me just ask you, when you guys did your clinical trial, and basically you're going after osteoporosis, right? So I'm in my mind, I'm picturing frail, older, less muscled individuals. So a skinny frame, olive oil.
Not exaggerated kyphosis, so they're not hunched over.
Right.
But weak.
Yeah. So
definitely weak.
So you're not getting people that maybe they didn't work out, but they worked heavy construction or something like that. You're not getting that body type. You're getting
no. In East London, like it's part of the reason East London was a great part. Well, University of East London was there also, which is where the principal investigator works.
Okay.
So that
now when you get these people and you got the positive effect of bone health, were these people putting on significant amount of muscle as well? Like, could you visually see that?
Bone density treatment doesn't build muscle size.
Okay.
Really.
And what I'm asking is, there's no like lesser known reaction the body has is as bone density goes up, it also increases muscle mass. You know what I'm saying? Like there are often those co-reactions in the body for preservation.
There's a couple of changes that happen to the muscle through the bone density treatment. One of them is the density of muscle. So you have more of a myofibril effect than a sarcoplasmic effect. There's zero sarcoplasmic effect.
Okay.
So people that want like explosiveness without any size, like a sprinter, that's awesome. But also, there's a little bit of that, but you get none of the sarcoplasmic side, which is a benefit to some like speed athletes. The other one is it trains the body to fire more muscle faster. So that is a huge benefit.
So you're talking about recruitment, like
the ability to recruit muscle faster.
Okay.
So that is it's not a muscle growth difference.
Yeah.
But it's a big functional difference, because especially with older people, a lot of them only fire a fraction of the muscle.
Right. And they may be walking around with sufficient muscle to deal with impact. So stepping off a curb, stumbling, tripping out of the bathtub, which, I mean, if you need to catch yourself, and speed is key in those situations.
That's right.
And that's the difference between, literally life and death is, falling and breaking a hip when you is at an advanced age is a marker of death is outside your door, right?
50% chance of death within 1 year of a hip fracture if you are over the age of 50.
Jesus, that's insanity.
Yeah, and that's just from other factors, like you get pneumonia because you can't get up.
Right.
You can't move. You can't ever heal from the pneumonia, so the pneumonia takes you out, or some other So it's the complications that take you out. But ultimately, 50% chance of death within 1 year after the age of 50. 50 is not that old.
Nope. I mean, that's halfway onto the actuarial table for the U.S. now. But so going back to the chronic pain thing, so you were doing this research, and you knocked out the osteoporosis. You have a great way to improve that. You have a great way for individuals to get massive amounts of stimulation and massive amounts of muscle growth, which is your X3 product.
Right.
What are the secrets for those listening? What are the secrets to dealing with chronic pain or pain in general that we can do through essentially attacking what we already got, the bones, ligaments, tendons, and muscles?
Sure. So both solutions address chronic pain, both OsteoStrong and X3. They do it a little, with X3, you're built like it's a kind of a complete musculoskeletal solution, but not really the skeletal part as much. So like the reason OsteoStrong must exist is you cannot get to the loads that are required to trigger bone without either high impact or OsteoStrong. You just can't. Like in the lower extremities, 4.2 multiples of body weight is the minimum that is required to trigger bone growth. So,
wow.
Yeah. Almost.
You're talking about, like, let's say your mom is 75 years old and weighs 100 pounds. You're talking about she needs to, at minimum, deal with, what'd you say, 4.2? So 420-pound deadlift, squat. Like, I mean, I just can't even think of any exercise where.
Yeah, leg press doesn't count because most of the weight is going into the ground.
Yeah.
Because you're pushing up at a 45-degree angle. So you're only pushing like I don't know the geometry there. I think it's about you're pushing about like a little less than half of the weight, right?
Yeah.
So forget the leg press.
So if you're going half, then you need to load the leg press up with 800 pounds. And I just don't see you putting your mom in an 800-pound leg press and not freaking out, right?
Yeah. 840 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. A 100-pound woman's not going to get under that. It was a very sobering moment when that came out. And I mean, I knew it was good for business because it just proves my point, like crystal clear. Like, yeah, a lot of people go out and exercise, and guess what? They still get osteoporosis. And I think one of the worst recommendations in medicine, other than some of the ones that have come out recently, is that exercise is good for osteoporosis. That is fucking bullshit. It's at what level of exercise? So it would be sort of like aspirin is good for headaches. Well, how much? Like 5 grams or 5 milligrams? Well, 5 milligrams will do nothing. 5 grams will kill you. But 350 milligrams? Yeah. That's what will take your headache away. Right. Okay. That's why they tell you 350 milligrams.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a mystery.
It's funny you say that because
right on the bottle. But when they say exercise is great for osteoporosis, or you should do resistance exercise. Well, how much resistance? Picking up a glass of wine is resistance.
I've had patients come in, dude, and they've told me, I can think of a specific woman that said, I went to my primary care and he said, I've got osteoporosis. So he put me on a supplement. I need to exercise. I said, okay, great. What exercise did he recommend? And she said, he thought it'd be smart if I start with water aerobics or swimming. And I'm like,
0 impact. That will do fuck all.
I'm like, of all the things you just said,
most asinine response ever.
Yeah, I was like,
right.
I don't want to break this woman's heart for the fact she's motivated to exercise probably for the first time in her life. But if you could do that every day, twice a day, expend every extra ounce of energy you have and get no results and be heartbroken. Sure. And I'm like, does this guy understand what is going on here?
Competitive swimmers lose bone density very quickly because they're not in an impact environment. They need to do high impact activity. And they do.
Yeah.
They know this. This is like a known thing. Like swimmers will do plyometrics in their training to maintain bone density. Otherwise, they'll fracture something.
It's just, I was just blown away.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like,
so sorry, I keep getting distracted here, but chronic pain.
Well, typical, like the primary care doctors, you know how many exercise science classes they took in medical school? That's right, 0.
Goose egg.
Yeah. Well, and chiropractors take more. They actually study adaptive response, which is why when you talk about exercise and health, chiropractors typically have better answers.
That's right, baby.
Ask a primary care doctor, and it's just like, and I interviewed before I started X3, and I was gathering information for the book for Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. For those of you who haven't seen the cover, this is it. It's on Amazon. When I was researching that, I interviewed probably 200 physicians. And and I had a battery of questions, and I didn't end up using this in the book because it was kind of a mess, because it was sort of like a footnote for each one of the 200 doctors.
Right.
Yeah, because it was very different answers I got. But a lot of them believed, like maybe close to half, like 40-something%, believe exercise doesn't do anything. And they're like, oh yeah, they're like, you're muscular, you were born that way.
Wow.
And I'm like, really? You really think that? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but I only developed this muscle after I started exercising. And they're like, nah, you probably had it. You were just fat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I've gained like 60 pounds of muscle. Like, I'm like trying to like tell them, and they're like, nah, yeah, I don't believe in that. And it's like, these are MDs. These are guys that are supposed to know something and give health information. And, and it's these aren't malicious people. But you wonder why MDs don't really recommend exercise typically. And to a that's point, why they actually don't believe in it.
Yeah. And to a point, I would agree. Like, there are genetic factors, certainly, you know, and your genetic makeup, but I would love to see those case studies essentially of identical twins separated at birth. I would love to see a case study of like, you get some twins separated at birth with horrible genetics, and you put them in, you send them to live with Usain Bolt and his sprinter wife. Like, what will happen? Probably a lot of good stuff. And then the opposite probably will happen. But let's focus on how you take the worst parts and pieces and make the most out of it. That's the interesting story, right? Like, even in novels, you don't want to have somebody you don't want to have a quote unquote hero who has all the solutions and all the abilities from the start. No one would read that story. Like,
oh, you mean Captain Marvel? Yeah, that movie did terrible.
Yeah. Because it's just like, they didn't have to work hard. They didn't have to achieve.
Right. Every other started out with everything. Had to kind of earn their way. Like, they had to like die, incredible pain. And
you're old enough to remember Die Hard. Like, that movie was incredible because the guy was a total pile of shit at the beginning. Like, he was a total piece of crap to his family. His family didn't like him. And then he literally had to slog through all his mistakes and then cuts his feet on glass and does all this stuff. And then at the end, he's a hero.
Right. God, at the end,
people were standing up cheering for him at the end,
Yeah. That guy that like came in here and we all threw out because we thought he was crazy.
Right.
He was right about everything.
Right. Yeah. And and anyway, so that path to going from nothing to something that's the American dream, right? That's, we love hearing that about immigrants and everything. Like, I started with $5 in my pocket. Now I own the number one sunglass factory in the US. Like, I love hearing that stuff, you know? So anyways, so you interviewed these doctors. They didn't think that anything could change. You obviously personally
almost half of them, they just didn't believe in like exercise at all. And in their defense, how about this? And I ask people this question all the time. How many people does fitness work for? How many people do you know fit this description? Been to the gym on a regular basis for over 2 years, haven't seen any change at all. And people are like, oh yeah, I know like 20 guys like that.
Oh, 20?
20. Yeah. Well, you probably know 2,000 people like that, but you're a chiropractor. So,
but I mean, like you just go into a 24-hour fitness, let's just say a major chain. If you were to, no matter where you go, Pennsylvania,
the people
Wisconsin,
in 24-hour
Texas,
fitness and the people in Pizza Hut, they're the same people. They look exactly the same.
And the interesting from a research aspect is the people in 24-hour fitness are self-selected, as we would say. All right, they have selection bias, and yet you're still not seeing incredible results, even with that selection.
No, not at all. Well, but and then my question is also like, and this is like the premise of my work, like all of my work, bone density and the muscularity arguments with X3 in my book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. I got a couple other things coming out that are right along the same line. We're going to help people tremendously. Like, I think fitness is the greatest human failure. More so than anything else. Now, nutrition plays a huge part in that, obviously. But like, who's really fit? Like I know a couple guys that are in pretty good shape, and they all have supplement deals. Why does everybody I know that's in great shape have some sort of endorsement deal? It's because it's rare. It's really rare.
Yeah.
To be, let's say in your 30s and have really visible abdominals.
Yeah, I mean, you got a good chance of getting a contract to be on the cover of magazines, right? Like at that point, if you I get
spot like I got my own business, that I don't want to like endorse other products, but I get like the craziest offers for like, like, hey, model this, or like, hey, can you wear a watch while you're like not wearing your shirt and your pictures, and I'm just kind of like. At first I was like, what? Like, first of all, I'm not that good looking. I'm all right. But, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to, be painting me, for example, making some oil painting of because I have such a pretty face. Not going to happen. But it's the body. Like there just aren't a lot of people that look like me. Yeah. And that's kind of my point. That was kind of like the driving force behind everything I did. Like it is so uncommon to be exceptionally fit. I mean, I say exceptionally, like it's sort of a self-provable statement, but it's an exception when somebody has a six pack. It's an exception when somebody has, a bicep peak, when they can, do most people listen to this, but, they have a distance between the bottom of the bicep that's like, bigger than their face. Like that's like a proportion that's like really hard to attain. Right. And, almost nobody has it. And so that's like when I say the whole fitness industry is wrong about just about everything they're doing, and the whole nutrition industry is wrong about just about everything they're doing. People are like, well, fuck you. There's a lot of research. And I go, oh yeah, really? Well,
hey man. Yeah. It's like in the study of low back pain, like this is a common thing. The population believes, I think as a general rule, that any issue we can see on an MRI, just your discs bulging or herniated, is therefore a surgical solution. Like therefore you need surgery.
Well, that's a nice billable event.
Yeah, but what we're seeing is money on surgery. You might have that pathology and no pain. That might be just commonplace for humans. Those bulges and herniations may go away, and we're just seeing a picture of a moment in time where those things occur. And if that's the case, I don't think you could translate that, or you couldn't convince most just of the general pop that that's the case. But that's what the research says. And sometimes, I think you're in the business of research that people just don't agree with. They're like, no, that's not it. And it's like, I'm showing you data. I'm showing you that we have data to say that this is, this is what works, or that you believe works doesn't work. Like, are you familiar with the term non-Newtonian? Have you heard that, like non-Newtonian rubber and things like that? Yeah. I think that right now, like for the way we're addressing the pandemic, we are hitting a lot of non-Newtonian walls. The belief that doubling down on something will get a reaction that will be great enough to slow this down. So for example, like doubling masks, the research does not say you get double or even a 25% improvement in outcome.
The research actually says masks don't do anything.
Right.
So,
but
that is have two of something that doesn't do anything. Now you have two of nothing.
Times 2 is the same as 0 times 1 is the same as 0 times 3. But the thing is that the problem is in all of this, in your work and in the pandemic response and in DISC thing, is there is not a clear line between pure fact, proven fact, and belief by somebody, right? Like if everybody believed that the X3 product built muscle better than anything else, your sales would multiply by 100. And it's like, we have fact, we've done the research, we have response, we have case studies, we have all these things, and yet there's still not this movement. And I think it's the same with, when I tell people about back pain and they go, well, do I need an MRI? I'm like, are you willing to have surgery? No. Then we don't need an MRI, because the only reason we do it is if we're leading to MRI. Okay, but should I still get one? And I'm like, we're not talking about logic and data anymore. We're talking about psychology, which I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent there, but I want to go back to
it's a worthwhile tangent, because what are people willing to do? Like, I think a lot of times when I bring up the failure of the fitness industry, like, especially when I talk to some trainer who like doesn't know how to read the research I'm referencing. So in their mind,
doesn't know how to read the research you're referencing, or just doesn't even realize there's research.
Probably both, or doesn't care about research because, it's like the Dunning-Kruger, research.
Yeah.
Like everybody should read 1999 Dunning and Kruger. It's a study that shows that the dumbest people in the world believe they're the smartest people in the world. In fact, the smartest people in the world, they kind of they believe even when they're 100% competent, they're more like 90% in their belief in their abilities. Whereas the people who are 10% competent believed they were 100% competent.
Right.
So the dumbest assholes out there believe they are absolutely, like, that's the buck stops with them. They're the smartest people. And this explains like a lot of conversations on the internet where people will speak with absolute conviction about something they absolutely know nothing about. Whether it's I can just, we won't get into politics, but I can just say politics. Like how many people are like going full force, like irate, like ready to kill people over an issue they don't even have the basic understanding. Like just go on Facebook and just type in economics and look at the absolutely bizarre, ridiculous, stupid comments. Yeah. Like I happen to read a lot of books about economics, so I have a great grasp of it. And I never comment on these things because what's the point? You're not going to smarten up somebody who believes they're a world authority, even though they don't even understand the words that they're using. Because, this is an expression that's become popular recently, and I don't know if it stemmed from the Dunning-Kruger research, but it's like smart people know what they don't know. Stupid people don't know what they don't know. And when you don't know what you don't know, you imagine all that shit doesn't exist. And so like a lot of these like fitness industry people, they don't have an ability to read research. They're just not intelligent enough, or they don't have the training or the patience. Because I can tell you, anybody who can read research. It just takes longer. Like you got to read a sentence and go, okay, I need to Google a couple of words to understand the sentence. But, okay, put in the work or shut the fuck up. If you don't understand what you're reading, don't just imagine that it doesn't exist. Yeah. Like that defines stupid. Like, I mean, you should probably run for Congress if that's your.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like, I mean, if you read research at all, I can't imagine you get past 5 articles, which in the world of anything is, you're not even scratching the surface. But just looking at methods, and you would realize how variable the outcome could be. Like, hey, we studied the title, the title of the research will be like the effects of high level weightlifting on pectoral cross-sectional area. And then you read down there and they're like, yeah, we did, we do step aerobics and we did 1 set of 10 push-ups every 4 days for 6 weeks. And then they'll say there was no effective exercise. Like, what are you talking about? Like your study was horribly designed. Nobody would, like, and so you understand those
Nobody
things.
would have ever said that effect would have had an effect.
Right. And
dude, I got something for you. This is epic. So now I'm not necessarily a proponent of this. And I don't think it was a good idea when the medical community was doing it, but growth hormone used to be prescribed for anti-aging reasons. Mm-hmm. It is no longer allowed to be prescribed for that reason. And I'll tell you why. Because there was a study that I think it was in the Journal of American Medical Association. Yeah, it was in JAMA. And so what this said was that growth hormone, exogenous growth hormones, or growth hormone via injection, did not reduce blood pressure. It did not. It like in the study conclusion, it listed a whole bunch of things it did not do, none of which anybody said it ever did do. Like, they didn't look at adipose tissue. They didn't look at body fat.
Yeah.
That's like the number one thing that people see, or elasticity of skin. The older you get, the poorer your elasticity of your skin is.
Right.
And growth hormone can regenerate that. Exogenous growth hormone therapy. But they didn't look at any of the factors that people actually would take growth hormone for. They just arbitrarily picked other stuff to look at.
Right. Like growth hormone doesn't affect the color of your eyes.
And then,
it's like,
so
nobody said it changed the color of your eyes, like what are we doing here?
There you go. Right. Yeah. Just and it's just like, now, I mean,
the one that I loved was,
I think growth hormone is sort of a dangerous thing to play with. And I tell people, even if they get a prescription for it, I'm like, I don't know if you need that. So I
was laughing about,
it didn't really bother me that much, but the study was like heavily biased, bordering on fraud. Like, I just don't know why that was done.
Yeah. The one I liked was, I don't know if you saw the Cleveland Clinic came out 6 or 8 months ago with that it was the effect of hydroxychloroquine when you weight corrected the dosage. And I was listening to this. So you had to correct the dosage to the weight of the individual, right?
Based on your blood weight.
And I was listening to a guy talk about this, and it was like the most amazing intersection of Western medicine and so hydroxychloroquine is mostly used for parasites, right? So think about, where do you deal with parasites? Like malaria, it's caught, right? Have you ever had a friend who caught malaria in the United States? No, right? Where does malaria affect people?
Contracted malaria in some shithole country, though.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In those, name some of those countries. Just go down this thought experiment.
Bali.
Okay. Bali and Indonesia. The local population, what's the average weight of the males in that population, if you were to guess?
Ooh, probably 160.
Maybe even lower, right? 140 to 160 would be my guess. But and then what's the average weight of males in the U.S.? Significantly higher, would you just say?
Yeah, I would guess 210.
Yeah, so let's just say from 150 to 200. I mean, we're being kind on both sides, but a 50-pound difference.
So 25% different.
Yeah, 33%, right? If you're going from 150, where the drug is prescribed, to a 200-pound male, you need to take a 33% increase, right?
You're adding a
third. Then, okay, so we're already like, well, yeah, why didn't anybody think to weight corrected? That's crazy. And then who is being hospitalized? Who is needing therapeutics? People that are typically skinny and light, or people that are heavy and obese and have high BMIs? Right. So now, is it a 50-pound difference? Or is it a double the body weight difference? And therefore, just going back to like your example of, hey, how much aspirin should I give for my headache? Oh, let's start at 5 milligrams. Well, aspirin's ineffective at headaches. Everything's ineffective if you dilute it enough. Hell, like, 1 part per million of anything probably won't kill you. Like, that's the idea. And so then if you just take it to the extreme example, and it's like, you have, there's a report of a guy like at the Cleveland Clinic, he was 428 pounds, and they're giving him like this standard dose. It's like, dude, that's built for, a population that probably the average of the males, females, and kids that they're giving it to is like 110 pounds. maybe it's less than 100.
At least they gave him hydroxychloroquine. There's still a couple of states where it's illegal.
Yeah, which is
even though there's
time in history
years of clinical trials there. Right.
It's one of the few drugs on the list of if you get pregnant while taking it, don't change, don't stop. Like that's a pretty high standard to meet. So
yeah.
Anyways, well, we're up against the clock yet again, and I don't think we've really exhausted the idea of chronic pain. So
what I will say about chronic pain is with variable resistance, with what I did with X3 and what's described, and if people have further questions, and what's described in the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. When you build muscle around a compromised joint, you can you have more force. There's a tensegrity supporting that joint, which means tension on all sides. So protagonist, antagonist is more powerful. The joint is supported better. Also, when you put compressive forces through joints, when they're in their axial format. So the way X3 works, as soon as you get to the axial format, so like you straighten your arms and chest press kind of thing. There's a great study on it. 1998, Benjamin and Ralphs talks about fibrocartilage growth, which is just the thickness of tendons and ligaments based on the loading when the joint is straight. Well, when the joint or close to being straight. When the joint is close to being straight with X3, you're using maybe triple the amount of weight you'd normally work out with. That's the point of the use. That's why I created it. Well, when it loads the body like that, you get growth in joints also. And that will be curative towards a lot of joint pain. So we see great, I mean, you started with this question, I took time to answer it, but well, I mean, as a general principle, I think everybody who's ever practiced medicine, like if you have somebody who's completely sedentary, getting them to walk, just walk, right? Yeah, right. Has a therapeutic effect. Now, what's that from? Is it from stimulating mechanoreceptors in joints? Probably a little bit. Is it from getting sunshine on your skin and being closer to, your DNA coiling? Probably. Yeah. Is it the fact that it's just changing your scenery and you're not moping around, focused on? Probably. Now, which of those can we affect? Well, I can't change your state that much from moping around to not moping, right? Like that's get outside your house, and short of like taking you to a vacation on Bali or something, it's not going to be that great. But if you're going for the stimulation of mechanoreceptors, we can make an exponential change there if a little bit, aka walking, helps. What you're saying is stimulate every sensory organ in the musculoskeletal system. So stimulate the joint capsule, the mechanoreceptors, the muscle spindles, right? The GTOs, everything that's surrounding that joint. Stimulate the shit out of it. And there's a really good chance that we'll start, I don't want to say curing pain here, but chipping away at the constant recurring pain signals going to your brain. You can't guarantee anything with anybody because everybody's different. And also people won't follow the protocol and they're going to eat Twinkies and shit like that. But easy. So you can't guarantee anything, but almost everybody who's had chronic pain and started using the X3, it's like I cut my pain in half in 3 months. 3 months after that, I cut pain in half again. So now, I mean, if they have a dysfunctional joint, like I have 2 bulging discs that I got from playing rugby in undergrad. As soon as I started engaging the body, following my principles that I put in the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, the pain, like it got less and it got less. And then finally one day, like I feel nothing. Like when I get up out of bed, I'm 44 years old. I feel the same that I felt when I was 15 years old. Wow. Yeah. And how long have you described that you would feel that good? I mean, like, is that just in the last 4 years, 2 years? Yeah, probably the last like 3 years. It probably took me like a year to really get it there. And so unlike most heavily muscled people, as you got more muscular, my pain went down. Yeah. Your pain went down, which is pretty normally rare. Usually it's the opposite. Like, stronger guys, everything hurts. That's an interesting point because I'm sure you've been around strong guys. It's not typically the presence of muscle
and we could say, cartilaginous thickness and bone density. That is the problem. It's the pathway of getting there, right? The repeated squats or whatever. Like you look at, Louis Simmons, right? The head of West Side Barbell.
Yep.
I think the guy could get hit by a dump truck and feel better than what he looks like. He just walks around the gym at, right? But he's jacked himself up 87 different ways in the process of weightlifting. But then I think if he wasn't as muscular as he is, would he feel even worse? So if he just stopped and was totally frail,
absolutely,
would he feel even worse? So you feel worse. You just, in some sense, I don't want to say this demeaningly, but you got to a well-muscled body without crashing into the guardrails along the way, without fucking yourself up on the path to that.
That's right. That's the whole point of my work.
That would be interesting.
You got to take the risks out of it. You got to amplify what gives the benefit, which is force. Yeah. And then you've got to deload. You got to take the force away when the joints are at risk. Because putting your joint, think about anything functionally. Like we talked about gymnasts. Gymnasts are some of the most muscular people. They're small, so they don't strike you when you think about strong people. But from a power weight ratio standpoint, most powerful people on earth.
Right.
They expose their bodies to extreme forces.
Right.
For a fraction of a second when they absorb high impact. That's it. Mm-hmm. And so, like in those positions are the same positions that with X3 we're delivering the massive forces to. So it's
brother. I mean, if I can help you in any way, because I would love to see some research of pain level at rest, and then in some ratio of like lean body mass to over. So find well-muscled individuals, right? Whether they have a history of, because you get well-muscled individuals in the NFL, they're all well-muscled in ratio, right? However, their resting pain is going to be very high. And one of the things that we always run into clinically is I can do rehab with you that relieves pain, but I can actually fuck you up and make you worse along the way too. Like I've done that. I've made people's back pain get worse. I made their knee pain worse, and it sucks. But it's one of the risks of the job. And if you can get to the end point with a whole lot less risk, like you're saying, that will open up rehab like crazy.
Yep.
For sure. Because I've done a lot of isometrics with people because of the safety. When I think they're really jacked, I will go to isometrics, and we want the perfect situation is high recruitment, low movement. But my problem I constantly run into, as you cited before, is the ability for untrained individuals to recruit to a point where that's therapeutic. It's almost impossible. So I always say, like, did you play sports in high school? Yes, we'll do isometrics. If you say no, I'm not going to do isometrics. I just don't think you'll be able to recruit. I mean, that's my little litmus test, but anyways, a lot of interesting info here. So tell people where they can get a hold of you or find your products if they're inspired to do so. Yes.
So I created, because my last name is difficult to spell, I created a landing page where you can find me in every venue. It's drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com. You can find my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you click on Superior Exercise, you'll find X3, Superior Nutrition, you'll find Fortigen. That's the only supplement I take. I put the most content on Instagram. I just like the platform. So I have 1 million followers there. So I suggest anybody, follow me on Instagram.
Last question, because you brought it up earlier, and just to wrap this up, chronic pain patients, sugar is the worst thing, right? That's absolute worst food they consume. The problem being, when you're in chronic pain, you're sitting on the couch, you're blah, 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 like sugar is very easy to get a hold of, and your brain tells you it's going to make you feel better. Do you have any products for like appetite suppression or anything like that, or any tips for that to get them over that hump?
Fortigen, that's the supplement I take. It's an essential amino acid complex that's far more efficient. Essential amino acids have been out there a long time, and they didn't do shit. And the problem is they were all made incorrectly. So they weren't made via bacterial fermentation. That's the only way to get them right. And they weren't done in the proper ratios. So they basically went through the body and just became nitrogen waste. There was a company sort of in the early 90s that developed a formula that did it right. And everyone knew the industry was doing it wrong, but people bought it because on paper it looked good, and they bought it and it didn't do anything. So, and this was, through the 80s and 90s, we had essential amino acids that didn't do anything. And so these guys created sort of the lab kind, which actually does work. And so they put it out there and treated cancer patients with it to stop muscle wasting during chemo and radiation. And so like what ended up happening was I worked with some of those guys to create the ultimate anabolic protein. Needed to be adjusted a little bit to make it, anabolic instead of a cancer treatment. But is there some appetite suppressant effects of that? I mean, because it's a builder. Yeah. So you have like one dose of that will give you the equivalent of 50 grams of standard source protein.
Okay.
And I mean, it blends in a glass. It's as clear as lemonade. Like it's not like a heavy, thick, syrupy, sort of milkshake kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like lemonade. It has.
Remember Metrex where there was like sand in the bottle of your mixer. You had to constantly shake it right before.
Constantly. You have to constantly shake it. Right. Yeah. So no, this is like lemonade. And it's really light. It has 4 calories and you won't want to eat. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it doesn't even break a fast. You need 50 calories.
Really?
Yeah. And it actually amplifies autophagy. Because once you put essentials in the body goes, oh, okay, we can build some cells here. We can do some protein synthesis.
Yeah.
And then the balance, there's 7 essential amino acids. There's histidine, but you only need that as a kid. So as long as you're not an infant, you don't need it. And it's everywhere. Like you get hit plenty of histidine. So you get these 7 essential amino acids. And then you get because your body, that's the only thing your body can't make. So then what your body can make, it starts accelerating autophagy to get at the other proteins that it needs to complete the full chain of amino acids. So it's just harvesting old cells and destroying them and turning them into new cells. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a huge benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the side effects of Fortigen is you lose your scars.
Your scars?
Scars, yeah, because they're being eaten from the inside.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like I have a scar on my chin from a motorcycle crash. My whole life, it's felt like there was a really thick wire like stitched underneath my skin because it was just a huge scar from just splitting my chin open. Kids do that. It's gone. Like you barely see it now. And it was very pronounced my entire life. I have my fraternity letters branded on my arm, on my left arm. Like you can barely see them now.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
I can see there's something there, but I can't make out letters.
Right. Yeah. There used to be like a thick, like keloid, like it was just raised letters right on my arm. And my body's been just eating it from the inside. It's practically gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny, like you strike me as somebody like you found these, how to say it? There are things that people developed that get bastardized and you unbastardize them. Like people go, oh, amino acids are good. And you're like, true. However, what you're doing with amino acids is not actually
they're essential amino acids are amazing, but that's not what you're taking. You're taking some crap that's just going to go right through you.
Or like,
let me make it.
Like somebody was telling me, like, you can use an MRI machine to check for bone density or BMI. It's a really poor use of a very good technology. And you're like, you could also use it to check for like ligament tears and displacement of a joint. And people are like, really?
Right.
Yeah, really, we can. And you're like, let's do it. So that's what's interesting is, like I told you at the beginning here, like watching gymnasts and whatnot, they never go through a range of motion. They're doing triple backflips and landing on their legs.
Every joint is optimized when under load.
Right. Yeah. And they're dealing with those incredible impacts and then going from there, and you look at them and they're all, even the females, in their, whatever you want to say, the peak of their estrogenic cycles are incredibly well muscled, which is tough to pull off. And even they are, there. So,
right.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much. So drj.com. So doctorj.com. Yep. And it's the X3 product, OsteoStrong Fortigen. If you see that, or you see a well-muscled dude on the front of a book called Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, it's this guy we've been talking to. Well, listen, Dr. Jaquish, thank you so much for the time today. Yeah. I think you're changing the world and certainly shaking up the etch-a-sketch of how we do things. Like, we shouldn't just keep doing them. We should actually look at the research and follow what the research guides us to, instead of just accepting what the broskies in the back of the gym are doing, and we'll have a whole lot more success.
Awesome.
Well, on behalf of Dr. Jaquish, this is Dr. Josh Saturday saying, go out there, maximize your license, and live the life you dream of. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there, here, or anywhere to get more videos just like this. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.